Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to our show. William Wallace for America. You are on my Finding Freedom Forum, where we talk about where we're losing freedom in America. Yes, we are losing freedom in America. And I bring on people that I meet all over the United States in my travels to be able to not only answer that question, because you would be surprised at the answers that you get, but find out what other people are doing to fight for freedom in their communities, their states, and for our country. With me now is one of those individuals, Marylyn Todd. Marylyn, thank you so much for being on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, William Wallace, for having me. I love saying your whole name. I have to say the
I
whole
love it.
name.
Thank you. I appreciate it because look, I love my name, and I'd much rather hear William Wallace than anything else. So, Marylyn, I've met you at at some different conventions around the country over the past couple of years, and I've always known you to be very passionate about freedom, and you fight it in some different ways, which we're going to get to here in a few minutes. But first, where do you think that freedom is under attack in America? We have a little bit of a delay. Can you
I
hear
think
me?
freedom is under attack. I can hear you. I think freedom is under attack in all aspects. And that's what I realized, during COVID. I think the COVID and the election both simultaneously, because they both happened at the same time. So basically what I realized is how is this America? How is this the America that I grew up to know and to love and to appreciate? And how are we locked in our houses? How has my kids not been to school in 2 years? How are, as an accountant, how am I seeing these people close their businesses and file final tax returns for them? That was really heartbreaking as an accountant to see. I just saw so much. And then, never in a million years did I think America's elections were ever corrupt by any means. And then, I saw, I saw, I audited the New Hampshire elections all by myself, and because I wanted to get my own answer. So from auditing the New Hampshire elections, I just realized that, and mind you, I thought New Hampshire was like the original Patriots. That's what I thought of us like. I never would have thought in a million years that New Hampshire had manipulated elections. And I found out way more than I wanted to that New Hampshire absolutely does have manipulated elections. We had 22 towns in 2020 that had more voters than people that were over the age of 18. 22 towns in the state of New Hampshire. It was really disgusting, everything I found, and I just knew right then.
No, so you all found
Sorry.
22 towns. Oh, that's okay. There's a delay in the sound, but you said you found 22 towns that had more, or the whole state rather, had more voters than people of voting age in New Hampshire alone.
Correct.
And what else, what other irregularities did you find and see on paper?
So I noticed that Harry Hursty deleted our memory cards during our audit. I also saw that our machines were like flipping results, right? So like, for example, say you had a town that was 70% Republican, 30% Democrat. The machine, so say there would be three machines, right? So machine number one would display that they voted for the president about 70-30, 70% Republican, 30% Democrat. Machine number two would say 30% Republican, 70% Democrat. And then machine number three would say 70% Republican. So one of the machines would be inversed, and that just happened a lot in New Hampshire. And that is an anomaly. And actually, there was a documentary made. I don't remember right now if it was Kill Chain or Hacking Democracy, where they actually said that kind of anomaly is only 1 in a million chance. So we had about 33 towns that had 1 in a million chances in the 2020 election alone. And these were the people that actually that made the documentary, that actually audited the state of New Hampshire, that erased our memory cards. And remember what I told you in our last interview is They literally used, so LHS, who's a Dominion contractor, they actually, and that's who owns the machines, they actually used his instructions for the audit. They didn't use the manual. They actually used his instructions. So that's like, and I like to bring this up, but that's like me, like you being under audit by the IRS and you giving the instructions to the IRS on how to audit you. Could you imagine? That would never happen. So once I saw like the difference.
Go ahead.
So once I saw the difference, because as an auditor myself and as an accountant, I've literally seen the IRS raid businesses while they were open over, a little bit, like, because they thought that they owed taxes, right? So once I saw the difference between an audit at the IRS being able to SWAT team in while the businesses were open compared to how that they were allowed to use their own instructions in an audit that is about our freedom. And once I saw that money was more protected, it really made me motivated, because it was like, how do people not understand if your freedom isn't worth anything, then what is your money going to be worth? If you're really not free, then eventually that's going to trickle down to money. And right now, money is just a false. It's just a false hope we have. We think we have this money, but it really doesn't exist if you're not free, right? Because if you're not free, you're what? You're a slave, right? There's only one other option. So I just knew that my kids were going to really suffer. I mean, and our grandchildren and America's future generation. So I just knew I had to get involved, and I knew I had to do everything in my might to try to get people awake and try to make people see what is the truth and what's not.
Marylyn, I gotta stop you for 1 second, because I gotta tell you something. On all of my freedom forums that I've done and all of my shows that I've done, you directly connected money to freedom. And you directly made a statement that I've never heard before. Now, I've always tried to connect money and freedom, and I think I've done it successfully in a lot of other ways. But you made a very great point that I would like to use in the future, which is, if you don't have freedom, what good is money? And I've always connected freedom, economic freedom, money to freedom, having freedom to the ability of making money. But you're exactly right. If we don't have freedom, money is worth absolutely nothing. And that's a great, great point. And the other thing is, and I wanted to point this out to people that are watching, that, and people who watch the recording, is, you are somebody who's very commonsensical. You're very pragmatic. You're a numbers person. You're a CPA. You've been an accountant forever, and you're not somebody who goes in there that's driven by narratives. And this is what I want people to really notice in this interview with you, is that you don't go in there and say, hey, the narrative is this, so I'm going to go in and prove this. You're somebody who looked at numbers and said, I'm a numbers person. I can see that the numbers aren't adding up. I want to work harder in my community. And you haven't gone out, and just wave narrative, narrative-driven flags. You've actually gone out and worked in the communities, worked with people, to find ways to make improvements in a peaceful, professional, positive way. And that's something that I want people to see more about you, that you're not saying, hey, this is something I heard, this is something I made up, this is something I saw with my own eyes. So you've actually seen the raids on businesses, you said, with SWAT teams and stuff like that?
Yep, for a POS system, point of sale system. So basically, if the IRS or the state feels like they don't even have to have any proof or anything, they just have to this. But I've had a business right before the 2020 election. It was a restaurant, and her business was literally during business hours. They didn't even wait till before business hours or after business hours to get her point of sale system. They literally went in during lunchtime and swarmed her business and took her point of sale system. So, I mean, this is the stuff that I've seen. And it's like, and then when I saw Harry Hursti delete our memory cards in front of our New Hampshire AG's office, I just said to myself, that is I couldn't believe the two different scenarios with money and then freedom. And I even remember pleading with the AG, and I was like, listen, I was like, you know what you're doing is wrong. This isn't a real audit. Please give us a real audit. What about your grandchildren? Like, what about your grandchildren? You know what you're doing is wrong. And I have this on video, and I don't know if you've ever seen it before, but our AG's response was, just because it's unethical doesn't make it a criminal violation, is basically what he said. And, right there, I knew that I have it on video. Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Okay. See, this is the kind of things where, there's there was that our Constitution provided that line of between, and of course I'm summarizing and I'm not saying it in proper legal terms, but due process. We have in our Bill of Rights, things are set up to where there's a due process, where it's done, where it protects, where the individual's rights are protected by the Constitution, but it was to prevent government from doing things like this. Imagine, if you will, this person, maybe there's been an error in the point of sale system. Maybe let's just say they were doing something wrong, to go in there during business hours. You're not only putting you're putting people at risk. You're not just going there to attack a business. Now you're going there and putting customers and regular people that aren't even involved in the situation at risk. If that doesn't show an egregious amount of overstepping by the government, that they went in there during business hours, put regular citizens at risk, and then, Marylyn, did they find anything in the end?
Basically, I left I went on a leave of absence to audit New Hampshire. So I stopped being the auditor. Those audits take like 7 years. The IRS takes forever to do an audit. So I don't really know what ended up happening in that situation, because I had to go on a leave of absence to audit New Hampshire. New Hampshire was a full-time job. I've never been into politics before. I didn't even know what a state rep was before 2020. That's how much I didn't know about politics. So, I had a lot to learn, and it was very overwhelming at first. And now I know everything about everything in New Hampshire. So it was definitely worth it. So
here's where I ask, what do you think that people can do to be involved to protect freedom and liberty? You've pointed out you think freedom is under attack. Just to reiterate, through our election system and through government overstepping its boundaries. That's what it sounds like to me. Were those your two answers, basically?
Yes, I do. I hope more people get involved. And if that means, if you're working 3 jobs, which you have to do in today's economy, which it should never have been the life that we're meant to live. But anyways, if you are working 3 jobs, even an email matters. An email every day to your state reps, to your state senators, to your town clerks, to get these machines out, to clean up your voting rolls. Emails matter. Going to meetings matter. And what I can tell you is, go to vote, even in your small town elections. Those are the most important. Go vote in your small town elections. Get involved in any way, shape, or form. Don't donate to the Republicans or the Democrat. Donate to the individual themselves. Donate to the individual that you believe in. That's how I think that we're gonna start making changes for freedom. And even one email matters. And that's what I try to tell people. Get as involved as you possibly can, because when I tell you our children's freedom is in jeopardy, our children's freedom is in jeopardy.
Well, Marylyn, what I always like to tell people, even more recently, is I've taken my focus off machines in particular. I've tried to put my focus more on getting more people involved in a positive way, so I can follow right there along with you. And I think more people can focus actually on getting, involved, cleaning up our voting rolls, cleaning up our election, the registrations, and getting involved and going and voting, because people don't realize that if you don't vote, your vote's going to be stolen by, someone who's doing ballot harvesting. They're going to find out that you don't vote on a regular basis, and they're going to snag your vote and use it. But I got one last question before I bring my guest on. What are you doing? What organization are you working with, or what are you doing to protect freedom in our country?
I am with New Hampshire Voter Integrity Group, and basically what we do is we just, like you just said, we just try to get people involved in any way that you possibly can. And like today, we have an election going on in Nashua, and so right now the goal is to just get as many people in Nashua, New Hampshire, to go vote for Michael Susi as possible, because that's another city in New Hampshire that we're losing to the Democrat agenda. And there's, it's filtered with drugs, it's filtered with homelessness, it's filtered. And this was a beautiful city, and it had it was like it felt like a town. And now, I remember before I left to move, I saw, for the first time ever, I saw someone overdosing while my kids were in the car, and I had to beat my horn to feel like, to jumpstart their heart, to like save them. I mean, this is what my city, and I've never seen a homeless person in my life in that city. So, I mean, that's the transgression that's going on in just a city that I was born and raised in. So, go out and vote. And, that's basically what we're doing. We're just trying to educate people.
I love the education part. Marylyn, I got my next guest coming on here. We got to bring them on. I'm going to have you on again soon. You're amazing. I always love talking to you because I like your calm-natured sense of way of educating people and getting people involved, and not just waving the narrative flags I think are dividing more people. I love what you're doing in uniting more people, Marylyn. Thank you so much. Marylyn, have a great day. I appreciate you. Victor, how are you doing today, my friend?
William, how are you, sir?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic, my friend.
I don't know if you can describe me as calm and uncensored, or censured as you put it, but here I am.
Well, no, I was referring to my last guest, who's calm.
I know. I was listening.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, Marylyn is amazing. One day, if her and her family ever comes down here, you'll have to meet them. You have to have her on your show, because she is extremely well versed. The 15 minutes doesn't do justice for her. She's got tons of great information. So, Victor, I'm bringing you on my Freedom Forum, man. How are you doing?
Can you believe this? I finally made the cut.
You made the cut a long time ago.
I made the cut, and I hopefully that I'm going to be on the show a lot longer than Aaron Rodgers was in the game last night.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we got you till 9:30 when the next guest comes on. Next guest comes on at 9:30.
Oh man, what a disaster, huh? Anyway, we're not talking sports today.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, you know what? I don't even keep up. Look, I don't even keep up with the NFL anymore. And look, and not because of the narratives. That was some of it. It just kind of, when they started injecting politics in it, that's when I lost interest. Whether it's right-wing politics, left-wing politics, I just simply got disinterested because I wanted, you want that distraction. And I think, not to bring it up, but it's another attack on freedom and liberty in America, Victor. Victor, you're on the Freedom Forum. What do you think? Where do you think we're losing freedom in America?
All right. Well, let me just say this to you. Already, I've got a lot of contacts and a lot of friends and family in California. And it's already starting to happen there. The thing with freedom is the only way to stay free is not to comply. Do not comply. It's that simple.
Right.
They're going to roll this. There's going to be a COVID right in time for the election. Expect it. It's going to happen. They're going to be mail-in votes again. You're going to have more of these mules. You're going to have more of these ballot box stuffers. It's going to happen. And you know what? Until we start playing in the same arena they're playing in, we cannot win. Okay? We've got, for some reason, the conservative folk, whether they're in leadership or not, are playing in their backyard. We got to get this game on our home field. And you can't comply. The mask thing can never come back. There was a video that I saw this week, you may have saw it, that did a major investigation on the N95 mask. Okay? And what they said is that not only does the N95 mask not protect you, it actually causes cancer.
What?
And yes, I'll forward you the video. The N95 mask. Now, I will tell you this. During the COVID time, all right, I probably Oh man, I probably flew more than I've ever flew in my life with my business. So I was flying all over the place. And I do a lot of Southwest. And the Southwest flight attendants, they're normally jovial and they crack jokes on the mic,
Right.
became mask police. But look, during that whole time, they told us before we got on the plane, they would not let you wear an N95 mask. Any other mask was acceptable except the N95 mask. And this is the mask that everybody, the government was saying that you only the N95 mask, only the N95 mask. And then, but Southwest was never the N95 mask. And it's just starting to happen again in California, where there's now mandatory mask wearing in establishments, in the schools. And if you think that this election is going to roll around and you're not going to have COVID roll around again in the same situation we were last time, you're kidding yourself. It's going to happen. Prepare yourself.
That's how they were able to change the election laws in the key states. And you can trace that, you can see that it was the key states that used COVID to change their election laws. Though, and those are the states that overturned the last election, where all the counting went, stopped at 10, 11 o'clock at night and picked back up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And you can see the direct connection. And still there's people who say, oh, no, it's not. It had nothing to do with it. Well, it's just a coincidence that not only were those states where the election laws were changed because of COVID, those are the states that overturned the election. Those are also the states that Bernie Sanders got on the late night TV show and named those states as being the ones that were going to overturn the election. And he did that a week before the election. I mean, it's all right here in our face. Yet there are still Republicans who deny it. I always say, look, where there's smoke, there's fire. Well, you know what? The best thing that we can do is stop fighting about whether it's happening or not happening and just get involved in the elections.
Yeah, and I think even more than that, I think what COVID had proved, and for anybody to think that COVID was just a U.S. thing, I mean, it wasn't. This bringing the world to their knees was somehow concocted globally. I mean, really, the whole world was doing it. They brought the whole world to their knees.
Right.
And these powers that be, this global board of directors, for lack of a better term, I don't know who these people are. I don't know who all these people are that who are pushing these narratives, pushing these agendas, getting books in schools in a back row that, hey, if your kid's curious, you want to learn about LGBTQ stuff, you go to that row. I mean, the people that are doing this stuff, they're not just here, they're all out there. And if you think that election didn't have anything to do with global influence, you're kidding yourself. It wasn't just a United States thing.
So when I asked you where freedom is under attack in America, and you talked about the mandates and stuff like that, you're thinking this is not just an attack on American freedom. You're saying that there's a global plan to attack freedom on everybody.
Absolutely.
Now, do you? I would think, but do you agree with me that the powers that be realize that if there was an attack on anybody else but the United States would still be there to protect everybody else. But they attack the United States and the world at the same time, and there's nobody can go anywhere. You're under, it's basically shelter in place, and everybody's got to fight for it and not comply, like you said earlier. And this is just not about mask mandates there, Victor. This is about everything. There's lots of rules and regulations that they're trying to keep rolling out with. And there's a fine line, though, between not complying and breaking the law.
Right.
And I think that now we're seeing that they're making those gray areas a little bit wider, if you will, because if you look at, for instance, like Marylyn Todd's last interview, that she had a client where the IRS raided for their point of sale. We hear about the J6er that's now that wasn't even at the Capitol, but got 22 years. And in a few minutes, I'm bringing on another guest that will talk about how our veterans are being locked up, again, for no reason, for not good reasons. Victor, what do you think people can do, and what are you doing to be able to fight for freedom?
Well, first of all, one thing we have to realize is our struggle is not against flesh and blood. It's against powers and principalities and the rulers of darkness. This is a spiritual battle. This is an attack on our very souls. Okay. There is evil in this world that is not known by most people. I will say this about the American people: we're spoiled. We're very spoiled. We're up to here with our pleasures. We're up to here with our relaxation, our leisure, and we don't realize what's going on in other parts of the world. Some of us do, and some of us don't. But if you take us down, everybody else goes down. You want to kill something. If you go for the head of the snake. We're the head of the snake, and this country is under attack. It's nothing to do with Republicans and Democrats and all that kind of stuff. It happens to do with actual evil people in this world. All right. And, like, for instance, my granddaughter turns 11 today, Harper Grace, and I'm going to pick her up from school today. And for me to to think forward, I'm going to be gone. To think forward of what kind of a world she's going to be, operating in when she's an adult, it scares the crap out of me. It really does.
Victor, when I'm not listening to my own show, I like to listen to your show.
What were you going to get to that? You've got
a great podcast that I got to tell you, is a very lighthearted approach to not only some of the things that we talk about, but you blend in what's going on with happy things too. And you blend it in a very positive way on your podcast. How can people listen to you more on your podcast?
Well, the thing is that don't let our humor fool you. We are aware of things that are going on. The name of the podcast is All Over the Road, New Orleans. And what we try to accomplish is to bring, and of course we have, followers and listeners like yourself all over the country, as we try to bring people in and deliver to them, positive stories, obviously with a New Orleans feel. But there's an issue that people are talking about. We will talk about it. And some of them at times can be political. My co-host, Ted Semper, who is someone that considers himself a political guy, he's our quasi-political guy. But no, we have Scott McKay on our show. We have you on our show fairly often. And so we talk about a whole lot of things. But you know what? The thing is that, right now we have to hold strong to our faith. We have to hold. That's why all this thing started. There is no America without faith issues. There is no America about people wanting to be free, worship the God of their choice, make their own decisions, good or bad, fail or success. And, do we still live in a free country? Yeah. But it's under attack, and all the countries that have freedom and liberty are under attack. We're not the only ones. So you can't comply. When they say wear a mask, you just can't. When they say you got to get a vaccine, you just can't. Look at this vaccine debacle. It's crazy.
It is. It's crazy.
And people are getting sick. And the thing is that there was one thing that I heard, and it was a conspiracy theory. But, I'm seeing people die all the time of COVID and dying of these conditions that are, pneumonish, flu-ish. And they all got the jab. Yeah. All of them. Let me tell you, don't get the jab.
I love it. Victor, I want to have you on a regular basis, but I've got my next guest queued up and ready to come on. We do these in every 15-minute increments, and I keep them rolling. And Victor, this is somebody you need to have on your show.
That's the bull. That's the bull.
That is Bull Gurfein. And let me tell you something. If you listen in, what he's going to talk about is to make you want to have him on your show too, because he's not only saving freedom, he's saving veterans.
That's very good. Very good. Well,
Victor,
good.
Thank you for being on there, Victor. Looking forward to seeing you again.
Thank you, God bless y'all. God bless
you too, Victor. Take it easy. Bull, how are you doing today, my friend?
All right, brother. Good to hear you and good to see you.
Good to see you too there. Thanks for coming on today. And I tell you what, I need to have you on a more regular basis, because I know that you're in the trenches fighting for freedom, figuratively and literally in some ways.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we're busy, and I appreciate everything you're doing to help communicate to everybody, all the challenges, because it's the people who stay engaged and stay involved who actually are willing to sort of come out of their own safe space to kind of figure out what's going on. the more they're aware, the more they can take action, the more that we can maintain our freedom.
So, Bull, let me ask you this. In the last few minutes, last 5 minutes of this interview, we'll talk about what you're doing, with your organization. But I like to ask everybody, because I get these unique pieces of information, this unique sets of motivation, we'll say too. Where do you think freedom is under attack in America?
Well, that's a great question. And, I think we have to go back and realize, which most people don't, because it's interesting when we have these conversations, is that our rights don't come from our government. They are inalienable. Okay, human beings are born with certain rights, and our founding fathers enumerated them, basically said life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, which is really sort of unique that they established a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Mm-hmm. Not to provide those rights, but to protect those rights. And what most people don't realize when you look at the Bill of Rights, like, oh, this is where the government has identified the rights we will be allowed to have. And it's just the opposite. It's where the government will not be allowed to infringe upon our rights. And so once people have that mind shift, it's eye-opening. And, if you go down the list, the First Amendment, our freedom of speech, is constantly under attack, where we have government influence coming in saying, well, this is what you're allowed to hear. This is what you're not allowed to hear. This is what you may say. This is what you may not say, even to the extreme to where we have government entities and as such, there's schools saying that you must say certain things. This is very interesting. It used to be that you would have freedom of speech to say anything. Now they've gone beyond that to where it's like, now you must use certain pronouns. You must say these words. This is a total bastardization of freedom of speech. It's going way beyond. And so the whole point is you can do what you'd like as long as you do not infringe upon others' freedom of, and that is life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So the freedom of speech is definitely, we see this across the board. A lot of challenges there, a lot of communications withheld, or it's being forced on people. But then you also have the whole concept of DEI, the diversity, equity, inclusion, being forced upon private citizens at the expense of meritocracy, at the expense of an individual's right to perform or run their organization as they so please. And so when we see this mandating of certain individuals must go here based upon their skin color, based upon their sex, based upon their orientation, based upon that, it's just flipping the narrative of a biased system, of a bigoted system, of a racist system. And it's a counterbalance that everybody's like, oh, well, we have to balance this out. And that's not the concept. The concept is individual rights.
And sorry to interrupt you, but you got me thinking about something that I wanted to use that moment to explain, which is equity versus equality. What you're alluding to right now is, in today's time, they're trying to use the word equity more, where in the past it was equality, and there was a time when our country fought to make sure that women had equal rights, minorities had equal rights, everybody had equal rights. And now it's more, and then it became, the shift today is more about equity, where now everybody should have equal results. Everybody needs to be, equal on earth. And what happens with that is, to make that happen, you've got to segregate people in there. You have to resegregate people from where we've been for so long, and be able to put them in their own little boxes and say, oh no, you got to be equal with that person. And then they change the rules of the game to be able to make that happen. And while they're doing that, they end up taking out excerpts of our Constitution to be able to make it happen. I think that's kind of what you made me think when you said all this.
Well, equity is another way of saying communism or socialism. That doesn't matter how hard you work, you're going to get the same thing. And unfortunately, under communism, socialism, it's minimal. And
Right.
we've seen it. And the only way communism and socialism can exist is with a totalitarian government or dictatorship. And so it's repression or oppression of the people, suppression of the human will to exceed, to excel. And it's the antithesis of everything that our country stands for, the free market system, capitalism, and the whole concept of, again, the life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, that you can work as hard as you'd like, or you don't have to work at all, but don't expect a handout if you choose not to work.
Exactly right. Well, Bull, where are you seeing? I know that you work with veterans, United American Patriots. Where are you seeing our freedoms under attack? Because I know, and I want you to tell about that here in a minute. And I'm kind of jumping the gun a little bit because I could talk to you all day like we're talking now. But I know how hard you work for our veterans, and I want to make sure that when I do shows, I bring up our veterans as often as possible. And you're working with an organization where our veterans' freedoms have been under attack. And I think that is even a higher freedom than our own personal freedoms here in America. And I'll explain why in 2 seconds, which is, they are fighting for our freedoms. They are putting their lives on the line of a check with no amount with their name written on it, payable to the federal government and the people of the United States. They are protecting our freedoms, and now their freedoms are under attack, and your organization is protecting them. Where are you seeing it the most?
Well, I appreciate you bringing this to everybody's attention. And the challenge is this, that the United States public respects our armed forces. It's one of the highest respected organizations. So try to bring to light where the organization has become corrupted and is now harming the individual warriors. It's a tough sell because people don't want to see this. And, so oftentimes they're like, oh, well, you don't like the military. I love the military. It's just like I love my wife. But if she had a cancer, I wouldn't stop loving her. I would do everything I could to try to save her life and remove that cancer. And unfortunately, our armed forces has a cancer. And it's the whole UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is a lopsided judicial system, which was never really set up to be a judicial system, but it's trying to act like one. And a part of the problem is the convening authority, the commanding general, he has oversight over the prosecution and the defense. So he has dominion over both. And not only that, but the jury. He handpicks, or she handpicks, the jury who's going to decide this case. And moreover, that jury doesn't need to have a unanimous vote. It can just have 3/4 of a vote. Moreover, unlike a jury out in the United States where you'd be randomly selected, you'd come, you'd hear the facts, you'd leave. Here, you would be sitting next to people you work with, and they may be senior to you. They may be your boss, and you may disagree with your boss, and you may say, you know what? I'm going to vote not guilty. And this senior officer is like, well, the commanding general would not have brought this person to a court martial if they were not guilty. So of course they're guilty. And you have to go home now and discuss with your wife, hey, if I vote not guilty, my boss may not give me the promotion, the job, the new assignment. This may hurt my career. I may have to leave the military. We may have to find another way to pay our mortgage. None of that should come into play when you're trying to decide innocence or guilt of an individual, but that's what happens. So there's a big systemic challenge. Unfortunately, we're fighting this through Congress, but there are individuals who are being wrongfully accused, unjustly incarcerated. The two latest cases, we had 2 Marine Raiders. They were found not guilty of all the crimes they were accused of, except for one. They threw this tiny administrative charge because they had a drink or two when they were in Erbil, Iraq. This is a very permissive environment. The military, the civilians, the Muslims, everybody's drinking over there. They had a couple of drinks on New Year's. And so they admitted to it because their integrity cannot be impeached. And so they found them guilty for having drinks. But because they threw that in as an extra charge at a general court martial, that's a felony conviction. So talking about rights being restricted, now they have a felony conviction which carries with them when they leave the military, and they're being forced out, again, for no reason. So now they cannot vote. They cannot sit on juries. They cannot own firearms. These are men who their profession is based about the use of firearms. We had a very similar situation, a drill instructor down at Paris Island. He used offensive language and was found a felony conviction for offensive language. And I know you probably have, people who are sensitive on this show. So I don't know if I even want to share what he said, but I think it's important that people hear the truth. He called recruits that he was training to be warriors in Paris Island. He called them war pigs. I know, it's horrible.
Oh my gosh, I'm offended.
You should be. You should be. And because of that, he has a felony conviction. A felony conviction for name call, is being kicked out of the Marine Corps with so what's happened is our warriors are still amazing. Our company grade officers are the best in the world. Unfortunately, at the higher ranks, up by the generals, not all, but many have become corrupted. They become political. They do not understand there is black and white. There is right and wrong. Everything for them is gray and situational. And many, not all, have become self-licking ice cream cones. They exist to satisfy themselves, just to ensure they get that next promotion. And unfortunately, we've seen that more times than not. We could carry this out as to why we had a 20-year war in Afghanistan against sheep herders. The greatest country in the world couldn't end a conflict like that in less than a year. Of course we could have. We chose not to because we wasn't politically correct. We ended World War II in less than 4 years. So certainly we could have ended that. So there's some serious corruption at the highest levels, and it's a moral corruption.
So just real quick, because I got another minute with you before I bring on the next guest, I've had you on before, and I'm gonna have you on again because I want to do a longer version, because these freedom forums are not only to talk about freedom and where freedom's under attack, which everybody gets a few minutes to do that, but they're also to introduce my guest. So when I do a later podcast with you later, we can actually go into more detail on this. But who's creating these? Who's changing the rules of the game in the military? Like, our Constitution was set up with a legal system, and now it sounds like the generals and the higher ups are changing, that system up, in such a way to benefit politics instead of benefiting freedom and our country. They're changing rules to benefit politics. Like, who's changing these rules and regulations outside of our Constitution?
So, in fairness, the Uniform Code of Military Justice has been around for a significantly long time, but only recently have we had professional attorneys becoming a part of the military. Their whole career is based upon how well they prosecute and convict people. So they're looking for wins. That's how they get promoted. So the lawyer, because America is a very litigious society, and the generals now defer to the attorneys and say, oh, what should we do? How should we handle it? It's a legal matter, and because they're warriors, and they don't realize that they're giving up their moral standing by totally turning and listening to these attorneys and not going with common sense, being the commanders, being the ones who support and defend. The drill instructor who was just found guilty of name calling. There was other charges where a recruit died under his command as a senior drill instructor. He was found not guilty of that. But what was interesting is the last major case back in 1958 where a drill instructor actually, Ribbon Creek, walked a bunch of recruits into a swamp and many of them died. The commandant of the Marine Corps, the senior general, was a defense witness. Chesty Puller, one of our most senior, highly decorated Marines, combat warrior that every Marine knows, was sitting on the defense. He was a witness for this drill instructor. Here, now, in this day and age, when somebody gets accused, everybody backs off. The leadership just doesn't want to be a part of it. So there's that inside the system. And a part of that is when all of a sudden now the Senate has to make confirmations. Now everybody has to make sure in the military they're politically aligned. But we also see senators like Kirsten Gillibrand, who has come in and she's actually changed constitutional precepts of the presumption of innocence to where she's now made it, especially for those who are accused of sex crimes, they must show that they are innocent. There's a presumption of guilt, and they have to prove their innocence. That's the exact opposite of the way our system was established.
Well, Bull, I have to bring on our next guest, but before I finish out with this, you are how can people find you on what your website is to find out more about what's going on?
Thank you so much for asking. UAP.org, UnitedAmericanPatriots.org, UAP.org. You can go there. You can follow us. We have a blog. I'm on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook. And we end up providing information. I give live updates every once in a while, but we constantly have a blog with all the different cases. We have a military mental health issue case right now. We're a horrible situation where warriors being held criminally accountable for a nonviolent crime, if you will. So we're looking at many different cases right now. We appreciate everybody's support. We're totally run on donations, and we appreciate everything that you do to get the word out and everything that we can get from all of our donors, I should say, to support everything we're doing as far as communicating with the president, with Congress, and also with the general public.
Bull, we're going to get you on again soon and get people to donate to UAP more often.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Hey, Bull, thank you very much. You have a great day. I'll talk to you soon, all right? Thank you for being on the Freedom Forum.
Semper Fi. God bless.
Thank you, sir. Hey there, Diane. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you for being so patient today, and thank you for coming on my Freedom Forum. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I try to keep on a schedule, and sometimes I give people a little bit more time because, I don't want to break that flow. So thank you again for being patient on there. I mentioned Springfield, a few weeks ago. I found you to be somebody who's passionate about freedom and liberty, and we'll talk in the last few minutes before our next guest on what you're doing to fight for freedom and liberty. But where do you think that freedom and liberty is under attack in America?
Just look anywhere. It's under attack everywhere. I mean, if you can't see that, you're blind. And I don't talk about the issues. We know what the issues are. Our borders being invaded. Your prior guest, the military is being decimated. The schools are being infiltrated by transvestites and drag queens and all of that nonsense. Just look anywhere. I mean, the COVID shut down churches, and what did the pastors do by and large? Nothing. So what I teach is what we can do about it. And the reason that our current government at all levels, the people who we elect who's supposed to serve us, be public servants, are not serving us is because they're not afraid of us. And the reason they're not afraid of us is because we're not organized and united politically where we respectively live in our communities in a political party. Our political parties are the organizations that we have to change the government by electing better people. And I was taught that in 7th grade, and I'll plug my book. I put it in my little book in 2017, How to Get into the Real Ball Game of Politics, Where You Live to Help President Donald J. Trump Make America Great Again. It's at my website, precinctstrategy.com. It's very short. Okay.
I love it. We'll have to check it in. Well, I want to ask, I love the role that you're on, but before I forget to ask this question, because you're in Arizona, does Arizona have a paper ballot system right now?
Yes.
Okay, because they had a lot of problems in the last election, and somebody made the argument with me the other day, well, Arizona has paper ballots. It's an example that we should not have paper ballots. What are your thoughts on that?
No, we have to have paper ballots. We have to have a one-day election, paper ballots, small precincts, verified voters. If you do vote by mail, it can only be for the military and for confirmed invalids. And like I said, it's got to be on one day, and you have to verify everybody's identity in person. Now, with vote by mail, we'll have to do it a little bit differently, but that's that should be a minuscule portion. Right now in Arizona, 80% of our voters vote by mail. There's a simple way in Arizona to defeat the vote by mail system. Don't vote by mail. I mean, it's not rocket science. And these are the kinds of things that I was taught in 7th grade. But see, they don't teach civics anymore. So I put it in my book. I have it at my website. And I don't ask for money. Okay. The only way I raise money is if someone wants to give me some money, I'll take it. And somebody has. I got one hefty donor one time through Steve Stern, the flag shirt guy. But I just asked people to buy my book because this is a handbook, and I made it as short as possible so that you'd read it. And I also put in the back the Declaration and the Constitution because I refer to both.
So let me ask you
what I sell is this. Get off your rear end and get involved where you live, or we're going to lose the republic. And I say this at the end of every one of my talks, and I might as well say it here. I podcast every day. I speak. I'm going to the Eagle Forum thing on Saturday. And this is what I say at the end of my talk, if I get a chance to say something like this. I can't guarantee you that if we fill up all the vacant precinct committeeman slots of the Republican Party, and over half are vacant on average in every state. In Arizona right now, ground zero for election integrity problems. 2/3 of our Republican Party precinct committeeman slots are unfilled. My precinct's full, but the average is 2/3 in a precinct of the slots are vacant. So I can't guarantee you that if we fill all those slots, we're going to save the republic. My crystal ball's not that good. But I've been in the military. I was an intelligence officer in the Army. I did counterintelligence and human intelligence. We're living through a soft coup right now, if you haven't figured that out yet, folks. And if we don't, as a first step, get organized and united politically where we live and fill up all the vacant precinct committeeman slots of the Republican Party, if we don't do that, you might as well say goodbye to the republic and say hello, socialism, because it's coming.
You know, I'm the things that you've pointed out, and I want to highlight this because, you know, we have a lot of people fighting against paper ballots, and I've had the example come up a couple times in the last couple days. So because I'm in Louisiana, where we're fighting to get paper ballots, and a lot of people say you're crazy, you're going to antiquate the system. You know, our election system is fine, and I tell everybody, look, I'm not fighting the machines. I'm not saying that they're bad or they're not bad. I'm not saying that they're manipulating votes or not. I really don't do that. I'm like you. I'm telling people, regardless of what you think about the machines, regardless of what the reality may or may not be, the real fight is in getting involved. The real fight is getting everybody more involved. It's getting people involved on a precinct level, which is one of the reasons why I brought you on. And it's getting people to be aware. So what I'm hearing from you is the problem in Arizona isn't with paper ballot system. It's because you all don't have involvement from enough people on a precinct level. And right. You got so much, and y'all push mail-in balloting, you know, which I think is ripe for fraud. Is where, because we've seen the movie, we've seen the examples. You know, all you got to do is, and it's easy to duplicate those ballots because our judges don't challenge it because they don't want to get seen as disenfranchising somebody's vote. That's another story for another time. I want to go back to focusing on you and what some of your ideas are. So you think freedom is under attack in our election systems. What are you doing? You kind of alluded to it. You started to do that, but I want more specific. What are you doing, and what do you think other people can do to get involved?
What I'm doing is at my website, precinctstrategy.com. I'm recruiting. Okay. The only reason I came on this program is because I thought maybe your audience would have some people in it who would actually want to do something as opposed to just write a check to some 501. That's not going to save the republic. Right. Go to a rally. That's not going to save the republic. Keep reading all the books that everybody writes, except this one. This one tells you exactly what to do, and it's short. You can read it in 30 minutes, okay? And it's like a cookbook for saving the republic. Those things are not going to save the republic. What's going to save the republic, if we're going to save it, and I'll ask everybody who's listening, have you already surrendered, or are you in the fight somehow? And if you're in the fight somehow, why don't you do it in the best way possible? Go find, and I have step-by-step instructions at my website. Go find your local committee, go to the meeting and volunteer. Figure out how it works in your state. I've got something for all 50 states at my site. I've got helpful links. I just added something last night on my helpful links page. Everything that you need to become a poll worker, to become a precinct committeeman, to get the Votify Now app, to get on the communications and collaboration platform that Robert Beadle's built for us, is at my site. Go there, take action. You know, Steve Bannon likes to say action, action, action. I say, I think he got that from me actually, but I changed it. It's political action, political action, political action. So what I do every bit of my time, if somebody asks me for my time, I ask myself, is my time that somebody wants from me going to cause one more person to become a precinct committeeman? And I thought that would be the case on your program, and that's why I came on. All I do is recruit conservatives into the party.
So Dan, you're freezing up here just a second on your oh, there you are, you're back.
Yeah, I saw that. My connection's not extremely good. But listen, conservatives suffer from what I call CPPPDS, conservative political party participation deficit syndrome. And there's only one cure. It's the individual conservative. Every individual conservative has to ask them the same question, you know, William Wallace in Braveheart told them all to ask before they went into battle. If you had one chance to save the republic, to save the nation, would you take it? Well, I'm giving you a chance. The chance is 3 hours a month of participation in the Republican Party. Half hour to drive to a meeting, 2 hour meeting, half hour to drive home. That's the average. Once a month. And then when it comes time for the elections, I teach how to boost turnout of the lower information, lower propensity voters. This isn't theory, it works. I had myself and my fellow precinct committeemen got over 90% of Republicans in 2020 to go vote in the general election. The average in Arizona was 71%. The average of all voters of Republicans, the average of all voters, eligible voters, was 65%. If we do that in every precinct, we can't lose, even with the machines. If we all vote on election day and don't do the foolish thing of voting by mail early, which is really, really stupid.
Dan, I agree with you on all this stuff. There, I have to bring my next guest on here in just a couple seconds, but I am so impressed by your information. I'm amazed by your passion. And I'm looking forward to having you on my show again, and maybe even doing a longer show where we talk just more about your book and your strategy and get more people involved. But I can't agree with you more. You know, the focus has to be on more people getting involved on a precinct level, getting involved in the election process on a local level. And if we all did that, we could have more control, not only over our elections, but saving our republic. One last question for you. How can people find out more about you and possibly even your book?
Just go to precinctstrategy.com, precinctstrategy.com. I try to make it easy. Everything is right there. If somebody who doesn't know anything about how our political system works spends an hour there, they'll know more than they've ever known in their life. I've got videos, I've got articles, I've got how to get my book, the helpful links page, the state information page, etc. So get there and study.
Dan, thank you very much. I appreciate you. I'm gonna have this up. This will be up on my website and on my Facebook and Rumble and YouTube page, and I will share it with you. And let's get some more people involved. Dan, thank you very much. God bless America.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Bye bye.
Hey, Francis, how are you? How are you doing today?
What's going on, buddy? It's good to finally be able to cross paths here.
Absolutely. Well, we cross paths all the time and see each other all the time. And I've been wanting to have you and your veteran group on and make sure we talk about, freedom and liberty with you, because every time I see you in person, we end up talking about that and our veterans. Yep. And I said, you know what? I want to make sure I get Francis on here. So thanks for hanging on, and thanks. And I hope you enjoyed, because you saw my other veteran, Bull Gurfein. You watched that a little bit. You just saw Dan, who it sounds like he's very passionate about, our country, which I agree with him on, on everything he
Right.
said. So, and now I'm bringing you on. What do you? Now this is my Freedom Forum, so I like to start every interview off with, where do you think freedom's under attack in America, and then we'll end up with, what are you doing? What's your organization, and what are you all doing to fight for freedom? But where do you think freedom in America is under attack?
Oh, man, that list is a very long list, and I don't think 15 minutes is going to cut it. But what we see here is that, especially what Louisiana's focused on, and I know you saw it, is the fentanyl distribution, stuff like that. The attack on gender and wanting to include female in the male bathrooms and whatnot. I mean, those types of things affect the kids here, and that's, to me, a big problem. Because
no, I agree with you. The fentanyl thing, I'm going to say two things, because I love, those are actually really great examples. The fentanyl, people say, well, how's fentanyl affecting our freedom? Well, in my opinion, the fentanyl is coming across the border, so our lack of border security is an attack on our freedom. Because, well, how can more immigrants be here and attack on our freedom? Well, more immigrants here is not only distracting Americans from what we need to be working on to save our country and protect our republic, save our republic, protect our country, because now we're distracted by the narratives that are coming out of that. Fentanyl is killing Americans. And when you're killing Americans, you're destroying a populace of people who love this country. Well, I'm sure it's argued on an individual level that maybe they did or didn't. But the reality is, when more Americans are dying as a result of fentanyl, sure, they should have been using drugs. I get it. But when you have an influx of fentanyl, an influx of drugs, it makes it too accessible and too easy. That being said, we're losing Americans as a result. When you talk about the transgender and issues, I think that's an attack on freedom, because as the narrative gets pushed, we're losing our freedom, because we can't say we disagree with it.
Right.
A violation of First Amendment right. So I'm circled back here to you on that. What do you say about that?
First Amendment right, and what really annoys me is that they try to push it as it's an attack on the LGBTQ community, and that's not the case. It's a protection of the children. You don't want a 17-year-old who thinks he might be a woman entering a bathroom with your 8, 9, 10-year-old daughter, or however old she may be, and vice versa. That's just something that's a children issue. That is not how you may think you feel as a human being issue. And the fentanyl, like you said, it's almost like a tiered response. It's, oh, the fentanyl so bad. Well, why is the fentanyl so bad? There's a direct correlation to the immigration. Okay, so how do we control the border? It's a one process and after the other. And that's not saying we don't want immigrants coming to our country. We just want to control how they come in, and they want to make sure that it's done correctly. Because if it's not done correctly, here comes the fentanyl with the coyotes and the human traffickers and all that. So it's a revolving door of problems. The solutions aren't simple, but the way to get into those solutions is to get the right people in office.
You made a really great point. You mentioned the coyotes bringing in people on human trafficking, and this is it's primarily a border issue, as we're talking about with reference to coyotes. But here's where else we have to worry about freedom and liberty. It's not in many cases, in a lot of these cases that we're talking about, we're not talking about our freedoms and liberties being under attack. My freedom and liberty is not under attack because somebody wants to be a transgender and use another bathroom. My freedom and liberty is not being attacked because somebody else is getting fentanyl. My freedom and liberty is not under attack because a coyote is bringing across humans, but their freedoms are under attack. And we as humans, I believe, have been granted our freedoms and liberties by our Creator, protected by our Constitution, which was inspired by our Creator. It's up to us as humans to protect their freedoms also. Even if ours are not directly under attack, theirs are. And the more we allow their freedoms to be attacked, eventually our freedoms will also be under attack and slip away from us because we didn't fight for their freedoms. And that's where I think that freedom is under attack in that situation.
Absolutely. You brought up fighting for the freedoms, and being a veteran, and most like other veterans, it seems like we fought so hard for the country that we love, and when we come back, it's almost like nobody fights for us, and we're pushed to a back burner until people start to stand up and be like, okay, we can fight it, and we need to.
Well, let's talk about that. What is your organization? How are you? You've explained how you think freedom is under attack. What do you think other people can do to fight for freedom? But what are you doing to fight for freedom?
What I'm doing is, being a veteran, I'm trying to use my local veteran community here in Louisiana, called Operation Continued Resilience. It's a 501c3, and like you said, we run into each other all the time. And the way I go about it is seeing what other states are doing, getting more involved in the political process, getting educated on it, because like your other people said, that has been a big deterrent, is that people don't get involved earlier on. But what I'm doing is trying to incorporate legislation here in Louisiana specifically for veterans. And that'll just hopefully make Louisiana one of the better places for veterans to live. And the more healthier veterans we do have in this country, the better places we can be. A lot of our veterans become law enforcement officers. If we have healthier veterans, we have healthier officers. So it's almost like that revolving door issue that I spoke about earlier.
Well, one more time, what the name of it is? Your website is www.operation.
No, francisdorsey.com /OCR.
They found out about your
Correct.
organization by going to francisdorsey.com
/OCR.
/what?
OCR.
All right. I'm gonna scroll this at the bottom of our screen.
Okay.
And so people can go visit, and they can donate at that site too, right?
Correct. There is a donate button at the bottom. It will automatically link them to the PayPal associated for the organization.
So let's talk, because we know where your heart is on freedom. We know that you have a passion for veterans because you yourself was a veteran. What branch of service were you in?
I was in the Army for 11 years. I did my first stint was in the Louisiana National Guard here with the 256 of Fighting Tigers, and then active duty with the remainder of my career. And I retired out of MacDill Air Force Base. So
you came back to Louisiana now you're fighting for veterans. You've started to tell us about your organization. I'm circling back to that here. And so specifically, you all work on legislation that helps our veterans, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Can you give us some examples of what your organization has done, which has helped our veterans? And look, I put the freedom of our veterans above our own freedoms, and I say it like that because if our veterans aren't free, if our veterans aren't supported, we'll have nobody to fight for our freedom. And
Correct.
like I know you tuned into the do you know Bull Gurfein? Have you met him yet with United American Patriots?
I have not yet.
That's a good one for you. That'll be a really good one for you to meet. He actually works with Susan White a whole lot here in Louisiana. I don't know if you know her or not. And so anyway, Bull Gurfein works because our veterans who have been wrongfully accused, or where the heavy-handed law in the military system has taken away their freedom. And you heard some of the examples that he gave. Though if we show by those examples to the rest of our young men and women that this is what could happen to you if you get in the military. We're going to have less people joining the military, which means less people to protect our freedom here in America and overseas. And as a result, our freedoms in America will be even more under attack, and other countries will see it as a sign of weakness, the smaller our military is. So to that point, you're coming in, it sounds like, and you got some other things that you work on to protect veterans with your organization. Tell us about that, please.
Right. This legislative session under our current governor's last year, we were able to pass unanimously, both through House and the Senate, Act 224, which was House Bill 167, and that waived the excess tuition and fees for any disabled veteran that uses post 9/11 the GI Bill, whether their percentage is 50% all the way up to 90%. If it's not 100%, anything else outside of what the GI Bill is going to cover, our universities are going to waive the excess to not put that financial burden on the veteran. That's what we did last year, miraculously, and it cost the state nothing. So that's another beautiful thing. What we're doing going forward is looking at other ways to incorporate getting more veterans into our state, whether it's through tax benefits for employers specifically, and also looking into Veterans Court more here in Louisiana. We only have, it's less than 5, I can tell you that much, out of the many 40 plus judicial districts in Louisiana. We only have 3 or 4. And that's what's sad, because veterans can end up in a dark place, and getting caught in the DOJ, or Department of Corrections, it's easy to get in, it's really hard to get out. And a veterans court would hold that veteran accountable, almost like a drug court, but with their VA medications and doctor's appointments. And it's all been a good thing. But sitting down with some of the DAs, and I won't mention any, here in Louisiana, I get a lot of pushback from it. How are we going to pay for it? Oh, the DOJ has grants. Who's going to write it? Oh, well, being a student at UL, we can assist with that. Oh, I just don't want to do it. Okay, well, thanks for your time. And that pushback is a little tough, but as some people say, that's just the nature of the beast.
I've had a chance to talk with General Michael Cushman, who works at some veterans courts in St. Tammany, and I've heard a little bit about this, and I've learned how easy it would be to have a more veterans courts around the state. But I've heard from him the pushback, and I hate to use the word devil's advocate, but the reality is I always hear from people who disagree with some of the things that I talk about and some of my guests. And so I kind of always, keep that ear open, because I like to use those questions, those denials, those whispers to be able to talk with my guests to get better information out there. What I'm leading up to is some people will say, well, those veterans are drug users. They were criminals. They were doing something wrong. Why should we have something special for them? I'm going to give my answer, and then I want you to give your answer. My answer is they signed their name to protect our freedoms, our liberties, and our constitutional rights, which are not only under attack at our nationwide level, but if they attack them on a veteran level, we're not going to have anybody to fight for us. The other thing is, a lot of these veterans, and I've interviewed with Bull Gurfein before. I've talked to some other veterans that have been in trouble before. Veterans are exposed, and I don't know if you know by experience, you were a veteran, are exposed to things that we cannot ever imagine. So it's harder for a veteran to come back, and harder for some people to come back. And in past wars, it went unnoticed, or they went forgotten. now that we have more awareness of it, we have an opportunity to protect our veterans in ways that it sounds like your organization is doing. And I'll let you answer that.
Correct. Yeah, and you touched on a bunch of the key points here. If someone says that, that's very easy to say, and knock on wood that I've never had anyone give me a response like that. Thank God for small favors. But the response to that is why should, if the question is why should we give those veterans anything? Well, because that veteran, like you said, signed that dotted line, raised his and hers right hand, and swore an oath. So that person who's stating that comment can make that comment freely. That's why. And some of us come back, depending, well, not really depending on what your job is, because everybody is different. But the nightmares of war, I wouldn't wish that on my kids. So yes, especially the Vietnam guys, when they came back, they were just pushed to the side.
Right.
Pushed to the side and forgot about. And people like me and other veterans that I'm starting to get around to are starting to see that, we can stand up to the LDVA, the VA, and hold them accountable. But like you said, the question is, or the response is, yep. I lost my train of thought there.
No, that's all right. I understand it because you're going a couple different directions. You were saying that the response to that person asking about why should we, care so much about veterans and veterans courts, and what I'll say before I forget, is that your organization is paving the way in multiple ways to be able to help veterans, and that's what it sounds like to me. Because the legislation that you can work with doesn't just get tuition fees, waive a GI Bill. It's creating legislation to be able to get more veterans courts. You're working with the courts to get those courts in their courts, and you're being that outside resource that you're not charging them on. You're doing this out of your passion, and still there's still some people that may ask why, and you're ready to answer that question.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, because we fought, and in some cases, some of our brothers and sisters gave their life so that person can ask that question freely and without, we say without judgment, but in our minds, I know I would if someone asked me that. And sometimes when those veterans come home, they feel left out, pushed to the curb. Some of them lose everything: house, money, kids, everything.
Well, to that point, there was when you said house, it made me remember there's an example of a homeowners association that a veteran in Texas was in Afghanistan, and that homeowners association assessed him his homeowners fee while he was on active duty. So not only was he not aware of it because he was in the battlefield, but he couldn't pay for it because he didn't know about it because he's in the battlefield. And the homeowners association exercised their rights as a homeowners association and took his house away because he did not pay his homeowners fee. And now he has since won it back in court. This is a story I'd heard, but here's another way yet we're punishing our veterans. So we got to start wrapping up here in just a couple in a minute. What other things are you working on with your organization to help veterans? Other types of legislation? If there's any other examples that we can share.
Just trying to partner with other veterans organizations just to get the word out, meet like-minded people such as the AVA, things like that, because they have their own ideas when it comes to employment. But trying to get our veterans that feel down and out to get back up on their feet, to give them that hand up, to get back on their feet and find their purpose in serving again.
Well, I'm gonna have to connect you with Bull Gurfein over there at UAP. I think you really, really like working with his organization. I'm surprised you haven't met yet, but I'm gonna make that happen because he's really fighting hard. And once again, your website, francisdorsey.com/OCR.
Correct.
Francis, any final words?
No. Just vote right and keep doing what we're doing. Especially you. You keep doing what you're doing, man.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And I'm sure we'll cross paths real soon.
We are. Francis, hang on 1 second, please. Hang on just 1 minute while I close up the show. Thank you, everybody, for watching today. As you've seen, there's lots of reasons, lots of examples of how we are losing our freedom in our country. But most importantly, I think one thing that I got out of today's show that I hope you did too is we all need to be more involved. We all need to start connecting with other people. You don't have to be a Republican or a Democrat to hold your veterans closer to your heart or to work harder for our veterans. You don't have to be a Republican to just want election integrity. Democrats, you fought for election integrity way back for rights for everybody to have the right to vote, which was some of the things that you all said then. Now it's even more important because now voting is not only sacred, or has been sacred, it's under attack in our country because and only because we are not being more involved. Please share this interview with other people. It's going to be on YouTube, William Wallace for America, on Rumble. I'll post it back up on Facebook, and the audio will be on all podcast apps. Thank you so much for listening today. I appreciate you.